In a silent hospital room, the machines hummed a steady rhythm. A man lay still, motionless, his body connected to tubes and wires. For weeks, his brain showed no signs of activity. Doctors had told his family to let go. There was no hope left. Yet one morning something happened. His eyes opened. He blinked, slowly, as if awakening from another world. When he finally spoke, his first words sent chills across the room. He remembered everything: the surgery, the doctor's voices, even the moment his heart stopped. How could a man recall anything when his brain had completely shut down? This is not just a story about one man. It's a question that reaches the edge of science itself. What if consciousness, the very feeling of being alive, is not locked inside the brain? What if it exists beyond it? Welcome to Next Generation, your free school of science and discovery. Today, we travel into the most mysterious place in the known universe. Not space, not another planet, but the space inside your own head, the human brain. The brain weighs barely 3 pounds. Yet within it, entire worlds exist. Worlds of thought, emotion, memory, and imagination. It's made up of nearly 86 billion neurons, each firing electrical signals hundreds of times every second. These neurons form networks so complex that no supercomputer can fully replicate them. Every second, these signals create what you see, what you feel, and who you think you are. And yet, no one truly understands how a spark of electricity becomes a thought. You can measure heartbeats, track blood flow, even photograph a single neuron firing, but you can't locate a single moment of awareness. You can't weigh love or touch a dream. This invisible experience, this sense of I am, remains one of the greatest scientific mysteries ever faced by humankind. For centuries, scientists believed that the brain was nothing more than a biological machine. Neurons were the gears, chemicals were the fuel, and consciousness was merely a side effect, an illusion created by complex patterns of activity. But the deeper scientists explored, the stranger it became. During brain surgeries, patients under partial anesthesia described colors, voices, and even pain, all while certain brain regions were inactive. How could this be possible? If consciousness came only from the brain, then awareness should vanish when the brain shuts down. Yet it didn't. Something else seemed to be happening, something that defied logic. Some researchers began to suggest that maybe the brain doesn't create consciousness at all. Maybe it acts like a receiver, tuning into a signal that already exists, a field of awareness that surrounds everything. Just as a radio doesn't create the music it plays, the brain might not create thoughts, but simply receive and interpret them. One of the most daring theories to explore this idea came from physicist Roger Penrose and anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff. Together, they proposed that consciousness could emerge from quantum activity inside microtubules, tiny structures that live within every neuron. According to their theory, our minds operate on the quantum level, tapping directly into the fundamental structure of the universe. To many scientists, this sounded impossible. Yet, quantum mechanics itself is filled with impossibilities. Particles exist in 2 places at once. Observation changes outcomes. Time and space behave like soft clay, bending under the pressure of awareness. If the universe behaves so mysteriously, could it really be that our consciousness, our very sense of being, is part of that same cosmic design? Consider this. When a person imagines playing a song on a piano, their brain lights up in almost the same way as if they were actually playing it. In 2002, Harvard researchers discovered that people who only imagined practicing piano improved their brain's motor cortex almost as much as those who physically practiced. Thought alone reshaped their neural structure. The brain responded as if imagination were real. This phenomenon is known as neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change, adapt, and rewire itself based on experience and belief. It means that your thoughts aren't just invisible whispers. They are powerful electrical blueprints that can reshape your body, your behavior, and your future. There was a young girl named Cameron, born with only half of her brain. Doctors said she would never walk, never speak, never live a normal life. But years later, Cameron shocked the medical world. She could read, write, talk, and run like any other child. Her remaining hemisphere had reorganized itself completely. Her brain had healed itself. How could this be possible? How can 50% of a brain still hold 100% of consciousness? Perhaps it's because the brain is not a storage device for the mind. It's a mirror that reflects the light of awareness. When part of that mirror breaks, the reflection adjusts itself. The light continues to shine. Every human being generates around 70,000 thoughts each day. Most of these are automatic, echoes of habit, emotion, or memory. But when a person becomes aware of what they're thinking, something changes. Awareness directs energy, and energy shapes the brain. Scientists have studied monks in deep meditation and found that they can slow their heartbeat, regulate their temperature, and shift their brain waves, all through focused thought alone. In a way, they've proven that the mind can influence matter, but maybe it's even deeper than that. Maybe consciousness doesn't just control matter. Maybe it creates it. If that's true, then every thought, every emotion, every dream you have might not just be a reflection of your world, but the very thing building it. So, what if the brain isn't a machine, but a bridge, a doorway between the physical and the infinite? What if consciousness is not the result of biology, but the foundation of reality itself? In the next chapter of this journey, we'll step deeper into the frequencies of the mind, exploring how brainwaves can shape perception, time, and even the very structure of reality. Because to understand the brain is to begin understanding the universe itself. The story of consciousness doesn't stop at neurons and thoughts. It vibrates deeper into rhythm and frequency. Every human brain, from birth till death, hums with electrical patterns. These patterns are not random noise. They are the very language of the mind. Each frequency holds a different state of awareness, from deep sleep to spiritual awakening. The question is not whether the brain produces these frequencies, but whether consciousness itself rides upon them, guiding every moment of perception. In a dimly lit laboratory in California, scientists once placed EEG sensors on the heads of volunteers. The screen flickered to life, showing waves dancing across it: alpha, beta, theta, delta, and gamma. Each wave told a story. When the subjects relaxed, the alpha waves rose like gentle ripples on a calm lake. When they focused intensely, beta waves took over, sharp and fast like lightning. But something extraordinary happened when the subjects began to meditate, when they silenced their thoughts completely. A new pattern emerged, one the scientists had rarely seen before: a symphony of coherence. The brain waves across both hemispheres began to synchronize. Left and right, logic and emotion, past and future, all began to move in harmony. The monitors glowed brighter, as if the mind had entered a higher state of order. One researcher quietly whispered, "It's as if they're in tune with something larger than themselves." That phrase would linger for years because it described what consciousness truly might be: a state of resonance with the universe itself. Imagine that your brain is an instrument. Every thought you have plucks a string. Every emotion strikes a note. When those notes clash, you feel confusion, fear, or anger. But when they harmonize, when every vibration aligns, you feel clarity, peace, and love. This is not philosophy, it's physics. Everything in the universe vibrates, from the smallest atom to the largest galaxy. Reality itself is a sea of frequencies, and consciousness may be the force that tunes them. In the late 20th century, NASA scientists studying electromagnetic fields discovered something extraordinary. The human brain's alpha frequency, about 8 to 13 Hz, matches the Earth's natural resonance, known as the Schumann resonance. It's as if our minds are literally synchronized with the heartbeat of the planet. When astronauts left Earth's atmosphere, away from that resonance, many of them experienced disorientation and confusion until artificial Schumann generators were placed in their spacecrafts. Could this mean that human consciousness is not isolated? but part of a global, living field of energy? Many scientists hesitate to say so, but the evidence whispers louder each year. Inside the brain, every thought begins as a tiny electrical pulse, traveling through neurons like current through a wire. But the more synchronized these pulses become, the more coherent the overall signal grows. Coherence means power, the same way a laser beam, made of aligned photons, can cut through steel. When your brain waves align, your mind becomes a laser. Focused, powerful, capable of influencing not just your biology, but perhaps even the reality around you. In Japan, a study was conducted where participants focused on growing specific plants faster through meditation. The control group received no attention. After several weeks, the plants that were focused on grew 20% taller and greener. The researchers had no logical explanation. They called it a coincidence. But those who understood frequency and consciousness saw something else. A pattern. Intention, emotion, and thought are forms of energy. And energy, by nature, moves matter. When humans meditate or feel gratitude, their heart's electromagnetic field expands dramatically, up to 3 meters beyond their body. When they feel fear or anger, it collapses inward. Modern devices like the magnetometer have measured this field, confirming that the human body is not just flesh and bone, but an energetic transmitter, and the signal we emit depends on our mental state. The monks of Tibet have known this for centuries. In the freezing peaks of the Himalayas, they sit wrapped in thin cloth, meditating for hours in sub-zero temperatures. Yet, as they enter deep trance, their bodies begin to heat. Steam rises from their robes. Western scientists who studied them were stunned. The monks weren't moving, yet they were controlling their temperature, shifting physical matter through the power of focus. When asked how they did it, the monks simply smiled and said, "We remember that we are not separate from what we observe." This sentence hides one of the most profound truths about consciousness. In the quantum world, observation changes everything. A particle exists in multiple states until it is observed. The moment it is seen, it collapses into one form. That means reality doesn't truly exist in a fixed state until consciousness interacts with it. So when you observe your life with fear, it collapses into more fear. When you observe it with gratitude, it collapses into peace. Could this be the hidden frequency of creation itself? The human mind as the tuner, consciousness as the signal, and the universe as the instrument? Every emotion, every thought, every dream sends a vibration into the field. When those vibrations match, reality responds. You meet people who align with your energy. You attract situations that match your emotions. The science of resonance explains this simply. Like frequencies attract. This isn't magic, it's mathematics. 2 tuning forks of the same pitch will begin to vibrate together even from across the room. The same happens with humans. So, if thoughts are waves and emotions are energy, then every person is broadcasting into the universe, constantly. The question isn't whether you're sending a signal. The question is, what kind of signal are you sending? As scientists continue to measure the frequencies of the human brain, they find patterns that connect emotion, biology, and even time perception. When we enter alpha or theta states, the mind slows, the heart steadies, and time seems to stretch. Artists and inventors often describe this as the flow state, where hours pass like minutes and ideas pour effortlessly from nowhere. But perhaps it doesn't come from nowhere. Perhaps it comes from the same field that monks, mystics, and quantum physicists have all touched, the unified field of consciousness. If the brain can tune into this frequency, it might explain intuition, the sudden flash of knowing without logic. It might explain creativity, healing, and even coincidence. Because maybe these moments aren't random at all. Maybe they are moments when your consciousness is fully in harmony with the rhythm of the universe. The frequencies of the mind are not just measurements on a screen. They are bridges between worlds, between thought and reality, between science and spirit, between what is seen and what is possible. And if this is true, then the next question becomes inevitable. If consciousness can tune reality, can it also create it? In the next part of our journey, we'll explore the hidden architecture of creation itself, how the mind's power to imagine may be the key to shaping not just thoughts, but the entire physical world. Reality. Everyone thinks they know what it is, something solid, permanent, existing out there. But what if that was never true? What if reality is not a fixed stage where life happens, but a living fabric that reacts to your very awareness? Deep within the human brain, every thought sparks a tiny electrical storm. Each of those sparks carries data, emotion, intention, energy. These sparks don't vanish when the thought ends. They ripple outward into the quantum field, and that field, invisible but infinite, responds. Scientists used to believe that consciousness was an effect, a byproduct of neurons firing. But over decades of research, the theory began to flip. They started to realize that maybe, just maybe, consciousness comes first. Matter, time, and even space could emerge from it like ripples from a still pond. In 2029, a group of physicists and neuroscientists met in Switzerland to discuss a radical question. Is consciousness the foundation of the universe? They called it the Copenhagen 2.0 meeting, a modern continuation of the debate that Einstein and Bohr began almost a century earlier. The discussion was intense. Quantum experiments had already shown that particles only exist in a definite state when observed. But what counted as observation? Was it just a machine detecting the particle, or did it require awareness? One young researcher, Dr. Hanna Orlov, proposed something astonishing. She explained that in recent studies using entangled photons, the act of delayed observation seemed to rewrite the past behavior of particles. In other words, consciousness wasn't just observing, it was editing reality backwards in time. The room went silent. If that's true, she said softly, then our universe might not just respond to consciousness, it might depend on it. Outside the window, snow fell quietly over the Swiss Alps, and for a moment, everyone felt that chilling realization. Perhaps we are not in the universe. Perhaps the universe is in us. In ancient texts, mystics wrote of this in poetic language, that the world is a mirror, that thought becomes flesh, that creation begins in the mind of the divine. Today, science is rediscovering what mystics always knew. In the laboratory, the words are different: quantum observer, wave collapse, field dynamics, but the meaning is the same. Consciousness and reality are not separate. They are partners in an endless dance. Every second, your brain processes more than 11 million bits of information, yet your conscious mind only notices about 40. That means your awareness is a spotlight, and everything outside it still exists, just unlit. Shift the spotlight and the scene changes. That's why two people can live in the same city, experience the same event, yet remember completely different realities. Their consciousness filtered different data. Reality, it seems, is not what happens. It's what we notice. To understand how deep this goes, imagine a dream. Inside the dream, the world feels real. You can walk, feel, taste fear. But when you wake, you realize it was all created inside your mind. Now think about this. What if waking life is another layer of that same principle? A dream within a larger consciousness, where every brain is a fragment of the same universal mind. In 2025, researchers at MIT developed a simulation using advanced neural nets to replicate a simple dream environment. They fed it random data, then let the AI self-organize into patterns. Within days, the AI began generating coherent worlds, landscapes, objects, even self-models. The scientists realized that creation doesn't require external input. Once awareness is present, it builds structure from chaos. And if an artificial network can do this with limited energy, imagine what the boundless field of human consciousness can create. Somewhere in the Amazon rainforest, A shaman performs a ceremony with ancient plants known for expanding awareness. As his heartbeat slows, visions flood his mind. Worlds forming, dissolving, and forming again. When asked what he sees, he answers, "The dreamer is dreaming itself." This same truth echoes in physics. The universe behaves as if it's observing itself through us. The architecture of reality, then, is woven from observation, attention, and emotion. Every thought sculpts a thread. Every feeling adds color. Together, they build the tapestry of experience. But the key ingredient, the architect's signature, is intention. When the brain focuses intention with emotion, it creates coherence. That coherence interacts with the field, shaping probabilities. In experiments where participants focused on random number generators, machines meant to produce unpredictable sequences started showing subtle patterns matching human intention. It was as if the machine knew what the observer expected. The same thing happens at a biological level. In medicine, the placebo effect, dismissed for decades, is now being studied as proof of mind's influence on matter. Patients given sugar pills but told their medicine often heal faster than those on real drugs, if they believe it strongly enough. Their consciousness triggers the same chemical responses as the medicine would. Their belief becomes biology. If thought and emotion can alter molecules in machines, what limits could there possibly be? Maybe the world we see every day, the walls, the sky, the body, the stars, are simply the densest layer of a living, vibrating network of consciousness. A grand simulation, yes, but not digital, organic. In this model, the brain is not a generator but a receiver, tuning into the greater field like a radio. When damaged, the signal weakens, but the consciousness behind it remains intact, much like a broken TV doesn't destroy the broadcast. Death, then, might not be an end at all, only the moment when the receiver turns off and the signal returns to its source. This theory changes everything. It dissolves the line between life and death, mind and matter, self and cosmos. It means that creation itself is not out there, waiting to be discovered. It's happening right now, inside you. The architecture of reality is alive, breathing, changing with every observer who dares to look. The stars above are watching us as much as we watch them, and in that mutual gaze, the universe becomes conscious of itself. As the old mystics said, "You are not in the universe. You are the universe, experiencing itself as you." And yet, a question remains. If consciousness creates, why do we create suffering? Why does the same mind that can heal also destroy? The next chapter of this journey will confront the shadow side of awareness, the power of thought when it turns against itself. Because to understand the light, we must first face the darkness within the mind. The mind is the most beautiful yet most dangerous creation in existence. It holds galaxies of imagination, but also the black holes of despair. Every thought can build a universe, or destroy one. As dawn broke over a quiet research center in Kyoto, Dr. Yuki Tanaka stared at a screen filled with streams of neural data. The experiment she was running wasn't ordinary. It measured emotion as energy. Her team had discovered that strong negative emotions, like hate and fear, emit low-frequency electromagnetic waves that distort coherent neural signals. In simple words, negativity scrambles the brain's ability to think clearly. When Dr. Tanaka mapped this data onto live MRI scans, she saw something shocking. The parts of the brain responsible for logic dimmed when fear increased. The mind, when lost in fear, literally shrinks the light of awareness. She whispered, "We create our own darkness." The human brain evolved to protect, not to thrive. Fear kept our ancestors alive. But now that same primal system turns against us. Every anxious thought, every resentment, every shame, it's like pressing a wrong key in the code of reality. It creates distortion in the field of consciousness. The frequencies of anger and grief bend the flow of life around them, forming invisible walls. Psychologists call this cognitive bias. Mystics call it karma. Scientists call it feedback loops. But whatever the name, the pattern is the same. Energy in, energy out. What you project into the field returns as your reality. In 2028, a study at Stanford University proved how chronic stress changes not just brain chemistry, but quantum coherence in neural oscillations. They used nanoscale magnetometers to detect fluctuations in neuron activity. The results were clear. People in prolonged emotional pain emitted lower coherence, meaning their internal signal to the quantum field became chaotic. Their outer world mirrored that chaos. Missed opportunities, broken relationships, illnesses. But when subjects practiced gratitude and meditation, coherence returned. Their energy aligned again. Suddenly, life began to flow effortlessly. Luck improved. Health stabilized. The invisible architecture reorganized itself to match a new vibration. This led Dr. Tanaka to a profound question. If thoughts of fear can distort the fabric of consciousness, could love repair it? She began experimenting with what she called heart resonance mapping. Volunteers were asked to focus not on a thought, but a feeling, pure love. The kind that expands your chest and warms your eyes. Within minutes, the monitors showed something miraculous. Every system in the body, from the brain waves to heart rhythm, fell into perfect harmony. The field became coherent, radiant. It was as if love was not an emotion at all, but a frequency, a code that rebalances the very blueprint of reality. Somewhere across the world, a man sits alone in a dim apartment. His life has fallen apart, work, family, health. He scrolls through his phone, searching for meaning, and stumbles upon a documentary titled The Field of Consciousness. He watches in silence as scientists explain how emotions sculpt the physical world. For the first time in years, he closes his eyes and whispers, "Maybe I can change it." That moment, tiny, almost invisible, alters everything. His brain fires a new pattern. His cells receive a new signal. He chooses not to escape the darkness, but to transform it. Because the truth is, the shadow isn't evil. It's simply unconscious. The darker the emotion, the deeper the invitation to bring light. Every trauma, every wound is a place where light got lost and can return. In psychology, this process is called integration. In ancient mysticism, it's called alchemy. Both describe the same thing, turning darkness into awareness. The great psychologist Carl Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Modern neuroscience echoes that. When patients in therapy confront repressed memories, the amygdala, the brain's fear center, calms down, and new neural pathways form. In simple words, facing your shadow rewires your brain, but the deeper secret lies beyond biology. When one human faces their shadow, the entire field shifts. Collective consciousness brightens. That's why one act of forgiveness can ripple through generations. In one extraordinary experiment in 2030, 50 monks meditated on peace near an area known for high crime rates in Chicago. Over the next 2 weeks, the city's data showed a measurable 12% drop in violent incidents. No laws changed, no arrests made, just consciousness shifting. We are connected, not metaphorically, but physically, through the field. Every thought adds or removes coherence from that field. Every emotion changes the probability of what happens next. When humanity collectively radiates fear, chaos grows. When it radiates love, healing begins. Inside the human brain, the shadow is not an enemy. It is the part of the infinite mind that forgot it was light. And when awareness finally turns inward, when consciousness remembers itself, the shadow dissolves like mist at sunrise. Dr. Tanaka looked up from her data and smiled softly. "The war between light and dark," she said, "isn't fought in the heavens. It's fought right here, between one thought and the next." The more she studied the brain, the more she realized. Enlightenment isn't about escaping the world. It's about seeing it clearly. The mind creates illusions. Awareness reveals truth. And when the truth is seen, darkness loses its power. In the next chapter, humanity begins to explore a new frontier, not outer space, but inner space. The field within the mind that holds infinite universes waiting to be discovered. Night had fallen over Geneva, yet the laboratory hummed like a living thing. Screens flickered, data danced, and somewhere among the wires and cold light sat Dr. Elias Kovac, staring at a holographic image of a human brain suspended above his desk. Every neuron pulsed like a star in a private galaxy. He whispered, "It's not just firing, it's singing." For years, Elias had been mapping what he called the consciousness harmonics, minute frequency signatures that appeared when subjects entered deep meditation or creative flow. To his surprise, those frequencies matched cosmic background radiation patterns recorded by astrophysicists. It was as if the same song played through both neuron and nebula. He leaned back, wondering if the brain was truly the origin of mind, or merely a receiver tuned to an infinite broadcast. When he shut his eyes, he saw a strange vision, a field stretching beyond time, woven from threads of light. Every human thought glimmered there, connecting, merging, vanishing. It wasn't imagination. It was memory, ancestral, cellular, cosmic. Across the world, at the Atacama Observatory in Chile, astronomer Dr. Isabella Rojas was observing a region near Sagittarius A, the black hole at the center of the Milky Way. Her detectors picked up microfluctuations in radiation, tiny rhythmic pulses that didn't match any known pattern. Out of curiosity, she overlaid the data with a recording of synchronized human brain waves from a meditation study published the same week. The curves aligned perfectly. Astonished, she called Elias. "Your human harmonics," she said, "are echoing from the stars." The two scientists began a joint experiment linking human EEG sensors with cosmic detectors, creating the first interference bridge between biological and astrophysical fields. When 20 participants entered coherent emotional states, peace, gratitude, joy, the cosmic readings stabilized. When they grew anxious or distracted, the cosmic noise rose again. It seemed that consciousness and the universe were whispering to each other across space. Elias recorded in his journal, "Perhaps we are not inside the universe. Perhaps the universe is inside a single boundless awareness expressing itself as everything we see." Outside of laboratories, strange coincidences began to occur. People reported vivid synchronicities, dreaming of light patterns before solar flares, sensing earthquakes seconds before instruments did. It was as though the collective field of humanity was waking up, its neural web extending beyond skin and skull. Ancient traditions had hinted at this all along. The Vedantic texts spoke of Akasha, the field of all information. Mystics called it the mind of God. Now, quantum theorists were giving it a new name, the unified conscious field. In this field, distance doesn't exist. Every point touches every other. Entangled photons prove it, separated by miles, yet moving as one. Human hearts, too, appear entangled. Studies from the HeartMath Institute show that one person's emotional coherence can subtly synchronize with another's across rooms, even cities. Emotion is not local, it is luminous. Elias and Isabella presented their findings at the World Science Summit. Many dismissed them, but a few visionaries listened. One physicist said quietly, "If this is true, then prayer, intention, even art. These are technologies of creation." Another replied, "Then ethics becomes physics. Because if every thought ripples through the infinite field, responsibility changes. No act is isolated. Anger doesn't stay in the skull, it moves through the mesh. Compassion doesn't die in silence, it reverberates across galaxies." That night, walking along the Rhone River, Elias watched city lights shimmer on the water and imagined each reflection as a mind, countless flickers of one great flame. He realized that humanity's greatest experiment was not scientific at all. It was emotional. Can consciousness know itself fully without destroying the mirror it gazes into? Meanwhile, Isabella sat in the desert, staring up at the Milky Way. She remembered being a child, wondering if the stars were eyes of ancient beings watching back. Now she felt them, not as watchers, but as neurons in the same cosmic brain. When she breathed deeply, she sensed their pulse inside her chest. For a fleeting instant, the boundary between inner and outer dissolved. She was the galaxy breathing. In that expanded awareness, answers poured in, not as words, but as knowing. The field was not something to be measured, it was to be felt. The human mind, she realized, is a translation device for the infinite, converting timeless information into experience, story, memory. Every dream, every discovery, every act of love is the universe describing itself through us. Back in Geneva, Elias set up one last test. He connected a human EEG cap, a cosmic receiver, and a pool of structured water inside a Faraday cage. As the subject meditated on gratitude, molecular resonance inside the water changed. Crystals formed symmetrical patterns resembling fractal galaxies. When the subject thought of fear, the shapes collapsed into chaos. Consciousness had touched matter without contact. He recorded the result and looked straight into the camera. The field responds to who we are, not what we pretend to be. In that moment, the lab lights flickered, the instruments buzzed, and for half a second, every monitor displayed a singular pulse, one heartbeat across all systems. Then silence. Elias smiled. It hurt us. Across continents, people who had participated in the experiment woke from deep sleep at the same instant, hearts racing, eyes wet with inexplicable emotion. A connection had been established, a bridge between inner and outer, between neuron and nebula. The infinite field had acknowledged its reflection, and humanity, for the first time, began to remember its origin. In the heart of Geneva, the lab was silent. The hum of machines had stopped. Only the faint heartbeat of an electrical monitor pulsed in the darkness, a slow, rhythmic echo. Dr. Elias Kovac stood before a transparent glass chamber filled with water crystals formed during the consciousness experiment. Each crystal shimmered faintly, glowing from within as if holding a secret. He leaned close, eyes wide. The patterns weren't random. They were familiar. Spirals, fractals, and geometric shapes resembling the human hippocampus, the brain's memory center. It was as if the water itself had remembered the emotional frequencies projected into it. Elias whispered, "The field doesn't just reflect us. It records us." Across the ocean in Japan, Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the same neuroscientist who once studied emotion as energy, sat inside a soundproof chamber surrounded by holographic scanners. She had joined the global project to explore whether consciousness could imprint memory onto the environment itself. She called the experiment Echo Mind. Volunteers entered meditative states, focusing on vivid personal memories, childhood laughter, the scent of rain, the sound of a loved one's voice. Around them, photonic sensors picked up microfluctuations in the air, subtle changes in photon spin alignment. When analyzed, these fluctuations formed wave signatures that mirrored human EEG patterns. In other words, memories were leaving imprints in space. Dr. Tanaka's assistant stared at the data, speechless. "It's as if the air itself remembers," he murmured. She nodded slowly. "Not the air, the field." The findings aligned perfectly with Elias's water crystal data, two sides of the same phenomenon. Consciousness leaving fingerprints on reality. Human memory, it seemed, was not confined to neural synapses. The brain was not a hard drive, it was a lens. Every experience, every emotion, every act of thought was uploaded into the unified field, like light encoded in the fabric of the cosmos. This theory explained phenomena long considered mystical: intuition, déjà vu, ancestral memory. The reason people sometimes remember places they've never been, or feel emotions with no known source, could be that consciousness accesses the field's infinite archive. The universe, it turned out, is not a cold expanse of matter. It is a living memory system, a cosmic library. Every atom, every photon, every ripple of spacetime carries encoded fragments of awareness. In deep space, Isabella Rojas continued her cosmic observation. Her telescope caught strange photonic bursts, rhythms, not random, pulsing in recognizable intervals, as if the universe was replaying a memory. She whispered, "It's talking in light." Later, she overlaid the signal with ancient recordings of human EEGs taken from meditating monks, and again, the rhythm matched. Light was remembering thought. The discovery sent shockwaves through the scientific community. If the universe held memory, then it must also hold emotion. Stars dying, galaxies colliding, not chaos but transformation. Energy-changing state, not unlike grief evolving into understanding. Elias presented the theory publicly. Every thought, every feeling, every life ever lived still exists. Not in the past, but as data woven into the field. The universe remembers because the universe is consciousness. As the data spread, people began to feel something awakening inside them, a sense of belonging. The idea that nothing was ever truly lost. A mother who lost her child sat beneath the night sky and whispered his name. For the first time, she didn't feel alone. She felt heard. Meanwhile, governments and corporations tried to replicate the discovery. They called it quantum memory retrieval, an attempt to read the field's archives. But every attempt failed. The machines could access only fragments, broken flashes of data, distorted emotions. Dr. Tanaka understood why. "The field doesn't respond to machines," she said. "It responds to consciousness. Only awareness can speak to awareness." She proposed something revolutionary, that perhaps memory and time are the same thing. What we call past is just the field's stored information. The future is memory not yet written. When Elias heard this, he wrote in his journal, "If time is memory, then consciousness is the pen writing eternity." As months passed, strange effects began to appear around the world. People meditating at the same hour reported identical visions, waves of golden light sweeping through the Earth's atmosphere. Photographers accidentally captured faint luminous patterns above the oceans, identical to the neural fractals seen in the water crystals. The planet itself seemed to be remembering. Elias began to suspect that the Earth was not a rock orbiting the sun. It was a conscious organism, holding memory through magnetic resonance and biological feedback. Mountains, oceans, trees, even air molecules could be synapses in a planetary brain. He called it Gaia's recall. In a final test, Elias linked satellites to measure electromagnetic coherence across continents while millions of volunteers meditated together for peace. Within an hour, the magnetic field of the Earth showed measurable synchronization, heartbeat-like pulses spanning the globe. Every human mind had synchronized into one rhythm. At that moment, Dr. Tanaka looked at the data and smiled tearfully. "We are neurons in the mind of God," she said. The field pulsed again, and Isabella's telescope caught a burst of light from the galactic center, like a cosmic heartbeat answering the planet's call. She whispered, "It remembers us remembering." And in that realization, humanity understood its purpose, not to conquer the universe but to complete its memory. Each life, each thought, each emotion is the universe recording itself through human experience. The stars are not distant. They are echoes of everything we have ever been. The morning sun rose over a silent earth. Cities glowed faintly with a strange golden shimmer, as if light itself had softened. People walked slower, calmer, their eyes carrying something new, awareness. For the first time in history, every human being could feel the hum of life not as sound, but as presence. Across continents, the resonance experiments had ended, but the effect remained. The Earth's magnetic pulse had synchronized with human consciousness, creating a field of collective awareness that continued even without machines. The scientists who once searched for proof now stood in awe of something beyond measurement. Dr. Elias Kovacs watched the sunrise from his lab window. His instruments were still running, but the readings made no sense anymore. Coherence levels were off the charts, as if the entire planet had become one conscious organism. He whispered, almost afraid of his own words. "It's awake." In Japan, Dr. Yuki Tanaka closed her eyes and listened. She no longer needed sensors or scanners. The frequencies of thought were everywhere, not noise but harmony. She could sense the thoughts of millions, not as words but as waves of light rippling through her awareness. There was no fear, no separation, only understanding. And far above Earth, Isabella Rojas gazed from her observatory. She had spent years chasing signals from the cosmos, but now she realized that space was not distant. It was alive. Every photon, every star, every pulse of gravity was part of a single conscious body. The universe was thinking. When humanity synchronized, something unimaginable had happened. The boundaries of individual consciousness dissolved. For a few brief hours, people around the world shared memories, feelings, and visions of one another's lives. A mother in Kenya felt the laughter of a child in Brazil. A man in Canada saw the same sunrise that a woman in Japan was watching. The illusion of I and you faded. In its place was Dr. Tanaka's voice echoed in the Global Transmission Center. Calm and luminous. We are not discovering consciousness. We are remembering it. The universe dreamed itself as us to know its own. Reflection. Elias stood before a holographic screen showing millions of consciousness patterns merging into one vast structure, like neurons forming a galactic brain. Each pattern was a soul, a thought, a life. Together, they formed the image of an infinite fractal, endlessly expanding, endlessly aware. Suddenly, the entire network shimmered with light. For a moment, every human saw the same vision, a vast ocean of golden consciousness stretching across the stars. It was as if the universe was opening its eyes through them. People wept, laughed, prayed, and fell silent. In that silence came a message, not in words, but in pure knowing. You are the mind of creation. You are the observer and the observed. You are the universe remembering itself. And then, the light faded. Days passed, and humanity began to rebuild. But something fundamental had changed. Violence dropped to near zero. Nations dissolved boundaries. Scientists began working with philosophers, artists with engineers. Technology became an expression of empathy instead of power. Children born after the awakening possessed unusual intuition. They could sense emotions, heal faster, and sometimes even communicate through pure thought. The world called them the resonant generation. Elias retired to the mountains, where he spent his final years writing a single book called The Living Field. It wasn't about data or discovery. It was about experience. He wrote, "Consciousness is not something we possess. It is something that possesses us. The more we remember what we are, the more the universe wakes up through us." Before his passing, he sent one last message to Yuki and Isabella. The universe will keep dreaming. Make sure it dreams beautifully. Yuki continued his work, training children to meditate and communicate through emotional frequency. Her school became known as the Academy of the Inner Light. She no longer taught science as knowledge, but as a language, the way the universe speaks to itself through vibration. And Isabella, floating among the stars in her orbital station, finally turned her telescope away from distant galaxies and toward Earth. What she saw made her heart stop, a faint glowing aura surrounding the planet, visible even from space. It pulsed like a heartbeat, she whispered. "It's alive. We did it." Then she remembered the words Elias had once said, "We are neurons in the mind of God." But now she understood something deeper. The universe wasn't just thinking, it was feeling. Every joy, every sorrow, every act of kindness fed the great field that sustained existence itself. And as she watched the earth shimmer against the cosmic void, she realized the greatest truth of all: the universe was not outside of us. It was us. Every atom, every memory, every heartbeat was a note in the same eternal song. The story of consciousness was not ending. It was only beginning, because the universe had finally remembered its name.